Hello everyone. My name is Dr. Anissa Riley and we are here with season 4 doing a whole lot to show you that who you are is just as important as where you are. And guess where I am? I'm in the legendary studios, the Twin Studios in Astoria, Queens. If you don't know where that is, if you don't know where I am, I suggest that you Google it. And when you do, you're going to be so amazed at the people who have come through here. And one of the persons that have come through here, I'm sitting with right now. Her name is Serious Voice. And is she legendary? Yes. Do you know her? You should. And if you don't, you will once this is all over. So, welcome, Serious Voice.
Thank you so much, Dr. Riley.
I am so glad you are here. I am so glad that you agreed to sit down with us and have a conversation about what it means to be you, what it means to be woman, what it means just to be in this industry we call music. So, this season has been about identity, and I always like to ask my guests their definition of the word that represents our theme. So, what does identity mean to you?
For me, identity is all the things that make me who I am. So it involves, your environment that you grew up in. It involves your spirituality, your spiritual upbringing. It involves all of the negatives, the positives, all of those things make you who you are, and that's how you identify yourself. So for me, I'm a strong Black woman because I've always had to be growing up in Brooklyn.
Okay, Brooklyn,
right? BK all day, every day.
Okay.
I'm a mother of a handsome, intelligent young man who's in high school right now. And I'm also a wife.
Oh.
Yes, of a God-fearing man.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yes.
BK, B-O-Y, and M-A-N.
Yes.
All right, so you put that all together. You're a Brooklyn mom and a wife of an amazing man. So as you were growing up, I heard you talk about those things that made you who you are. So tell me, where did you grow up and what influenced you to be this strong Brooklyn Black woman?
Well, thank you so much. I grew up in East Flatbush, Brooklyn.
Okay.
And for most of my young life, just had to be a confident, strong Black woman because there were so many things coming at me and coming at the young women that were around me that I went to school with. We had to protect ourselves. Mm-hmm. We had to cover up, because at any given time you could be attacked on the streets of Flatbush. Mm-hmm. For those who know New York City, that's the hood, so you're walking down the streets, walking to school. You could be approached at any point. So you have to be on guard at all times. A lot of times people say you must be from Brooklyn because you have a certain aura, a certain confidence about you, a certain strength. That strength comes from, listen, if you step to me, I'm going to come at you in a certain way. And so I grew up with that confidence and that boldness and that sense of protection around myself and around my other sisters because we had to keep each other together. And just to stay away from a lot of those devices that would come and try to attack you and bring you down. So that's a part of my identity. And I can't shake it no matter, when I'm doing shows across the country, speaking, doing music, people say there's something about you that's just so confident and strong. And it's the Brooklyn. It's the Brooklyn in me.
And I'm glad you use the words confident and strong when you are describing yourself because society oftentimes takes this confidence and strong that we as Black women exude and call it aggressive or, the B word, or we are too militant. How did you separate yourself from what society would say or identify you as and use the words confident and strong and, as you say, Brooklyn?
Well, let me say this. It doesn't just stop there.
Okay.
You know, I take it straight to the Bible as well because God calls me beautiful. He says I'm the apple of his eye. He calls me so many amazing things. So I don't even listen to what the world says about me. I listen to what God says about me. And so all of that confidence is being amplified by my connection to God and my relationship with him. And that's how I do it. So when they come in, where's that coming from? Well, let me just break it down. I'm from Brooklyn, but guess what? Jesus. Yeah, that's it right there.
And I love it because those who follow me and those who watch my show know that I identify as a Jesus girl, that I'm grounded in who he is. And so when you use the word amplify, I think that is paramount to this conversation because people allow society to amplify their identity. How did you get away from allowing society to amplify it and get into the fact that Jesus is the one that's supposed to amplify your identity?
Well, I'll tell you this, the deeper you get into studying the Word of God, the Bible, the more you engage in spiritual things, meditating, you know, going to church, having fellowship with other believers, it strengthens you to the point where you're not even fazed by them using the phrase angry black woman. You're not fazed by it because you know God says you're fearfully and wonderfully made.
Okay.
So I'm not, that's the way we combat it, the word. So no matter what they say, you know, you're angry and, you know, there's this thing that, oh, black women, they have a bunch of kids, you know, they're in the system. I am nothing of the sort.
Okay.
You know, I look at what God says about me from the Bible and that's it, point blank. So I don't even argue. I don't even, you know, think about what the world has to say. I just brush it off.
Yeah, I'm watching it too. I see them every day.
Curtains. They're always drawn in this place.
I know.
That guy seems like he's in charge of them. I don't know. I don't feel very good about this.
We have to report this.
Yes, absolutely.
So what would you say to the woman, to the black woman who has gotten caught up in the angry black woman narrative, who has gotten caught up in the militant black woman narrative, and who has said, you know what, church ain't for me. That's good for you. That's good for all of them. But for me, what would you say to her?
Here's the thing. There comes a point in time when all the things that the world would tell us that would make us better, it won't work for you. You know, drinking, hanging out, you know, maybe, and yes, therapy is great. I believe even Christian people need therapy if you have certain issues. All of these things that we would try, they're great to a certain point. But when you truly try Christ, when you truly tap into that person that God has called you to be, and you tap into him, you tap into his word and his presence, it completely changes you. And so that's my advice to a young woman or a more mature person out there that would be listening, you know, to combat all these things that the world would try to put upon them, and just to get them stuck, because it's easy to get stuck in that cycle. And so it seems really simple.
Yeah.
But it's really not simple. My advice is always not even try Christ. Do more than just try Christ. Really put both feet into God. Open that book for real, for real. Walk into the building. Don't just say, you know, well, once I've paid my bills, because that's what we always say. Once I've paid off my bills and I get myself right and I stop smoking and I stop drinking and I stop fornicating, then I'm going to go to church. No, do it now when you're still doing whatever you're doing. Can I just break down? One time I was out in Connecticut, right? This is a real story. And I was invited to perform on a basketball court. And we're out there. It's cold in East Hartford, and that's the hood.
Yeah.
I did some gritty, you know, pro Brooklyn songs, but of course, Christ-centered. A young man had a bottle in his hand, Latino brother. He came over to one of the guys that was with me. I'm kind of like a bodyguard because it's the hood. And he said, I got to talk to Serious Voice because I connected with what she was rapping about. So finally he came over to me. My husband was there. My husband's like, well, what is this guy's... Exactly.
Yeah,
who are you? What do you
you?
want with my wife? What do you want with my artist? So he's like, brother, you know, I really connected and I want to get my life right. He's holding a bottle. I want to get my life right. Taking a swing. I want to get my life right. I want my family to be proud of me. We said, okay, brother, this is how you do it. Then he says, this is the joke of the whole thing. He said, before you pray, let me take a last swing of this beer, and then I'm gonna put the beer out, and then I'm really gonna do this thing. And we said, okay, take the last one, the last drink of your beer. We prayed for the brother. And this is what I'm talking about. No matter where you are, you could be in the midst of sleeping with 20 men. They're paying your rent, paying your phone bill, doing all these things for you. Despite all of that, are you really ready to walk in the building and say, you know what, God, I got all these things, but I want you to come and clean me up right now. I want you to change my life. I heard all these stories, but I want it for real, for real. And that's what I am telling those that are watching who are sick and tired of what the world is imposing upon them.
But let me stop you right there, because I know that there is somebody watching that's going to say, you know what, I walked into the church with the bottle in my hand. I walked in the church with my skirt right beneath my cheek. I walked into church with my bosoms out. I walked in the church and because I was ready. And when I walked into the church, they identified me with the bottle in my hand. They identified me with the short skirt, my bosoms out. And God didn't accept me. Those people didn't accept me. And it's because of that I ain't identifying with Christ. Like, so what do you say to those people who are like, I was ready,
but they rejected me,
but they wasn't accepting me for who I am? So that's why I gotta stop and I gotta clean myself up so I can go in and then be accepted.
You don't have to. Here's the thing. That church wasn't meant for that person. That particular church, because not all churches are going to look at you and say, oh, you look like a prostitute. We don't want you here. Not every church is going to treat you that way. And to be honest, if they treat you that way, they're not truly following the love of Christ or preaching and showing the love of Christ as it should be in the Bible. God is not looking at how we look, because none of us looked right. None of us looked the part when we got to church. I was an angry young woman, always banging and slamming doors. And, you know, I was one of those kids. Okay. I was one of those kids.
What you mean you was one of those kids?
I was one of those kids.
That what?
That was, you know, rude. You know, always slamming doors. My parents always trying to talk to me. I didn't want to hear because I was angry because of my home life, my home situation, not having my father in my life. My mother being present but not being present. She wasn't present emotionally. She wasn't present in so many other ways that a mother should be for their daughter or children. And so I was always angry. Until that one day when I said, God, I want to know you for myself. And this was in my bedroom. I had that conversation and I got myself dressed and I went to church. And that's when I started hearing. I was 15. And that's when I started truly hearing what the preacher was saying. And so what I'm saying is not every church is going to exhibit the love of Christ. And if you went to one and they didn't accept you, then you go to another and you keep going until you find the one that is going to say, come here, honey. They're going to face the fact that they weren't perfect when they stepped into the building. And they will say, okay, this person is not perfect. Let me work with them. Let me hold their hand. Because eventually the deeper you get into God, the more you will say, oh, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't wear the short.
The
short skirts. Maybe I shouldn't show the cleavage, because something is changing inside of you that takes away that joy from doing all these things. Maybe I should stop smoking the weed. Maybe I should stop doing this and doing that.
Someone's looking radiant. Thank you. Just got my Real ID star. Look at me, destined for stardom. Actually, we're traveling to New York to see a show next month, and today I fly to Chicago to visit the grandkids. Really? I'm a Real ID, so I can fly to all 50 states, D.C., and the U.S. territories. And we just booked Christmas in Puerto Rico, too. We'll give everybody a big hug. I'll just be here.
Be your Real ID self by May 7th, 2025. Find out how at tsa.gov/Real ID.
And it's interesting you say that because I heard someone say, if you spend time with Jesus and you don't change, then you really didn't spend time with him, because Jesus changes you.
Yes.
He changes your desires. He changes your wants. He changes your needs. And I even heard you say he changed you from being that child
Yes.
to who you are today. Talk about that journey.
Wow, that's been a long journey. Being angry, bitter, not knowing your biological father and wondering if that person ever truly loved you. And so I had to go on a journey where I had to travel to Guyana, South America, and actually connect with my biological father. And then I realized, you know what? I was blessed to have this man as my father, but not everyone is capable of being a parent.
Yeah. Ooh, talk about that.
And I had to deal with that. I had to, and same thing as my mother. Not every mother, every woman that gives birth to a child has the capacity to truly be a mother, a nurturer. And she really did not have that, because my mom had me at the age of 18.
Okay.
Right? And at that time, my grandmother had passed a year prior. My grandmother was 40. And so my mother was missing a mother.
Yeah.
And so imagine a child not having that mother to nurture, and what do? They do the very same thing that they were pretty much taught. And so I was angry at her for a number of years until I got to the point where I realized, why am I angry at her? She's trying the best that she can with what she had, what she was dealt with,
And that takes a lot to understand, because I say this all the time to people, especially parents. Do your best to deal with your trauma prior to you having children, because if not, you're going to bleed on your kids. You're going to bleed on your babies.
Right.
And it's just going to perpetuate itself. But how did you get to this point of seeing your mother in a way that you just described? Like, she didn't have the capacity. She did the best that she could, because some people are 70 years old and they still angry at their mother.
Well, I'm going to say this. I have my little moments. I remember when I was 10 years old and she got a cake and I was so excited. I'm still dealing with this part today.
Okay.
The birthday cake. We never got a chance to cut that birthday. And even today, as a grown person, like when I celebrate my son's birthday, I on purpose want him to have that moment where he can blow the candle out, where he can cut the cake. And people might think I'm this weirdo and I'm crazy, but that affected me. That kind of traumatized me as a child. And that's it was a trigger for me. And it's been a trigger. So like, it took a while, and the realization and the healing came through Christ. It didn't come from me having therapy. It came through Christ. And there's nothing, and again, I have to say this, there's nothing wrong with having therapy. Some of us need the therapy. For me, it was the deeper I got into Christ, the more Christ opened my understanding to who my mother was, and just spending time with her as a grown person, as an adult, asking others about her, and just figuring her out, because she wasn't the most vocal. She wasn't the most forthcoming, telling about, some of her interests and whatnot, because she had me at the age of 18. So she had to grow up pretty fast. But it took really having a relationship with God and being forgiving for me to understand that, to this day, I can't change my mom.
I heard you say she wasn't the most vocal, right? And so I find that interesting. The reason why is because your name is Serious Voice. Right? like she wasn't the most vocal, but I'm going to be called Serious Voice. Like that just like caught me, and I was like, oh, but that sounds interesting. So tell me, how did we get to name ourselves in this industry? For those of you who don't know, she is a rapper. Serious Voice.
Right. At the age of 13, you know, my brother came into the picture. And I was an only child for all these years, you know, on my mother's side, living in the United States. Everyone else is in South America, all my other siblings, through my dad's side. And so I just had to be this responsible young person and be serious. I couldn't be, joking or whatever. I had to be serious and I had to be responsible. So when my brother came into the picture, I was the big sister that babysat my brother and I had to be responsible. And so that's how the name came about. I had a lot of family members who would say, why are you so serious? Because I'm the big sister, because, my family gave me a lot of responsibility. So they always said, why so serious? Why are you so serious? So that name kind of stuck with me.
Okay.
And then, I started rapping and writing and doing all these different things. And I just said, I'll just keep that name.
I'm a firefighter.
A teacher.
I'm a farmer.
I'm a barber.
A waitress.
A mom.
We're all part of your community. Every day we move in and out of each other's busy lives.
It's easy to take for granted all the little moments that make up our everyday.
Some are good,
others not so much.
But that's life. It's when you experience a moment of uncertainty. Something or someone's behavior that doesn't seem quite right.
These are the moments to take a pause.
Because if something doesn't feel right, it's probably not.
It's not about paranoia
or being afraid.
It's about standing up and protecting our communities.
One detail at a time.
Because a lot of little details can become a pattern.
We
trust our instincts.
Just like you should.
Because only you know what's not supposed to be in your everyday.
So protect your everyday.
If you see something suspicious, say something to local authorities.
So it's interesting how a nickname that you received when you were younger, you chose to keep it, stick with it, and become Serious Voice. So tell me about Serious Voice. Tell me about her.
Well, those who know me know that I'm very serious about everything that I do. I'm serious about my relationship with God. There are moments where I have to step away from family. You've got to have that quiet time with the Lord. I'm serious about my husband, and I'm also serious about my son and everything that concerns him. And so everything that I put my hand to do, I try to do it in excellence. I try to do it, with the blessings of God. Because sometimes we want to do things, we'd like to do things, but God doesn't really want you to do it at that time. But it's like this wrestle, like, God, can I just? Yeah. And then you go and do it, and then you realize why God wasn't giving you the green light to do it. So I try to just pause and wait for him to give me the green light. Because the older I've gotten, the more I've realized, you know what? It makes sense to really just wait on God.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
That's like Solomon. He said, everything else is vanity. After he did all the things that he did in the Bible, Solomon, he then realizes it's just all vanity.
Right.
And it's interesting as I listen to you describe Serious Voice and her identity, it's not so far off than who you are, like who you are.
Right.
So it doesn't appear that you have like these two personas. How do you navigate the fact that you are this mother, you are this wife, you are this woman, but you're also this artist who has a public persona? How do you navigate those two identities so that way it doesn't appear as if it's two totally different people? Because there are some artists,
right,
who are two different people.
Right.
Because I know one artist who says, when I get on stage, but we ain't gonna talk about who that artist is.
Right. No, well, you have to separate the two. There has to be a clear separation, because it's like this morning I dropped my son off at basketball practice, and I can't roll up in there with the hair and the makeup and you know what I'm saying? Like, what's up, coach? Like, he's gonna look at me like I'm crazy. I'm a mother. This is mommy dropping off her son. Like, that's it, So you have to have that separation. So when I walk through the doors of my house, I leave the rapper outside. And I'm mom, and I'm, Mrs. James, and that's it. Yeah, that part, right?
Mrs. James.
Yeah, we're no longer Serious Voice. Even though sometimes she be trying to come out.
And Mr. James is like, not up in here.
Picked up every piece left on the concrete. Breathe life to the bones once hustling for the street. Back with him. So I was in a backslidden state. Now you back with him. Got on again. Life took my candle out. God gave oil again. Can't you see I'm cooking? Because you can't cook without.
You can't cook it.
You gotta have oil to cook.